The- Perfect. All right. Well, first of all, it's great to have you on the call today, Ryan. Just the purpose of the call is to have an open conversation about some exciting things going on within the industry. And, you've made a drastically large impact on the mining industry. And we just have a few questions for you to get a better understanding of your thoughts on where things are going and just, to get a sense of what you think about what's happening.
Okay.
So, first of all, just kicking things off, the first question that we had was, how do you envision things going for the future of blockchain technologies?
I mean, it still has another 20 years to go, most likely, close to it.
Is there any specific trends within that you're particularly excited about, or you think are going to be, rather revolutionary?
Well, of course, there's the two ones that have evolved into kind of a thing over the past year, even though, NFTs, like Engine came out in 2017 and you kind of knew that was the future, but all of a sudden there's a big buzz, right? So everybody knows that. Everybody knows DeFi. DeFi, you really started popping off about a year ago, in the summer, over a year ago now. So I mean, definitely those. But then there's other trends that are going to be moving forward, that are kind of, where you see the future heading, but aren't really a thing right now. And yeah, I think decentralized storage is going to be one of those. There's a lot of, I mean, it's a hard tech to build and do properly, but at the same time, there's going to be a bid because, well, quite frankly, people won't have a choice. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And then, you just touched on distributed storage. Is there anything that comes to mind in terms of particular challenges for the popularization of that sort of technology?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's quite a lot on the tech end, but at the same time, there's also another series of challenges that are going to lead people to it, right? So, I mean, the series of challenges that are going to lead people to it, at least in the United States, you can see in the news like once a week. It's like, the city of Atlanta or the state of Texas does something, and then you have companies in California saying, "Oh, we don't, we're going to boycott this, blah, 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 blah." It's like, how long does that take? I mean, they're already doing it with certain business operations. How long does that take to spill over? All it takes is one company, AWS most likely, to get infected with that type of mess. And then all of a sudden you can be cut off. And it hasn't happened yet, but people see the writing on the wall. It's not, it's a possibility. And if that's happening here in the United States, I mean, it's getting dicey worldwide. Just some of it's because of the internet, some of it's because of other stuff. But if that's happening here in the United States, I can only imagine what's happening around the rest of the world. So even though like a centralized data center might be more efficient and might even be cheaper, in the medium to short term, it's not necessarily going to be as secure if there's some sort of ridiculous political risk that develops within 6 months or less. It's like, I mean, we've seen this kind of roller coaster ride for the past 5 years where things that shouldn't be an issue all of a sudden become an issue overnight. And, it might, and now it's getting into businesses, and it might actually affect your operation. So, decentralized storage, I mean, just because of that, it's going to get a bid. There's no, because you don't have many other options. It's like a river, right? People have a need for this, and if certain kind of pathways they can go get cut off, or have the potential to get cut off, people are going to look for an alternative that works. So I mean, that's literally that's how I see it. And I know, like, it's going to go somewhere. Exactly how it's going to develop in the future, man, look, like I was with Engine in 2017. I had no idea that NFTs were going to blow up this big, like, in the past year. I could see Engine, I could see how it made sense. I could see future blockchain, blah, 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 right? But I had no concept of, like, oh, there's going to be this huge NFT craze coming, no crystal ball. So decentralized storage, I mean, could end up doing something like that, and certain other things in blockchain at some point in time could end up doing stuff like that. There's no telling, because the sector is still, I mean, it's only about 10 years old. Bitcoin's 11 years old. I mean, you didn't really start getting the rest of it until, you could possibly argue like Litecoin and Ethereum. So that's like sub 10 years. Most of these
Mhm.
technological adoption phases are like 30 years for consolidation until it's completely ubiquitous in everybody's life. So we still have quite a ways to go on the technology and the peaks and the troughs, and there's still a lot of opportunities and still a lot of hard work ahead to see exactly what solidifies, and is ubiquitous
Mhm.
in the future, like 40 years from now. So yeah, we'll
Absolutely.
see.
Definitely great answer. And then, obviously you just touched on decentralized storage a lot, but in terms of how you see its role within the broader cryptocurrency space, what kind of thoughts do you have about that in terms of where it sits alongside other, trends and opportunities that are happening?
I I noticed something really peculiar last night. I was just kind of messing around through about the top 40 charts or so,
Mhm.
and got in pretty good on Chia pretty early, right? So I'm familiar with hard drives and kind of like the price crashes and everything. And I noticed that Filecoin has seemed to be having the same price behavior for
Mhm.
some weird reason. Um, and so it just tells me that in some ways, like these types of technologies, anything that uses hard drives, even though Filecoin is a bit different than say Chia, but
Mhm.
for some reason it's kind of on maybe a similar bandwidth for some reason. And what I mean by that is like some sectors trade on their own terms. It's not, I mean, yes, obviously Bitcoin leads the market. Bitcoin's the, basically the base currency for crypto, but at some point, like all that's going to come back. It's just a matter of time. Now, whether is it next spring, is it December, is it next summer? Like I don't think so. I think it'll be sooner than that. But could it be 2 or 3 years? Like I don't think that's actually plausible either, and I'll tell you why. Because everything is accelerated.
Mhm.
I mean, we've seen it. Everything's really accelerated with and some of it was COVID, some of it was supply chain issues, or maybe it was all of it together. Maybe it was all of it together, but for whatever reason, all these cycles that were going on naturally with crypto seem to have accelerated. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think so the future of where that goes, I think right now, say with things like Filecoin and the rest, and any other decentralized storage, and even Chia, I think they're all kind of right now in like the winter stage for them, and they're like continuously improving the tech. And you'll have things like when you have things to deliver at some point, I think prices will go up then. That's kind of just basic. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer. And then, you kind of touched a little bit on the prices as well. Then looking more towards that short-term or medium-term window, with that demand that's come from those factors that you just mentioned, obviously prices have been rising quite a bit over some time. In terms of the window, I guess more so medium-term, what do you think about the current cycle and where it's at with prices,
with
and
everything,
with everything?
yeah, that's tricky. So there's a lot going on there all at the same time. Basically, like Bitcoin still looks like it continues to climb.
Mhm.
Um, I looked at Cardano last night. It looks like it's going to go down. Like I don't maybe so, and I think what you see on a broader scale is like over the years, the majority go up, right?
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that certain things don't get overextended. There we go. Yeah. It's not just like, I mean, you see this in other cryptos too. Like I think the graph, it appears to be breaking out.
Yeah,
Like it was.
I think it's a
Yeah.
little bit better now. It just came back to like white bars from the red bars, so I think we should be good.
Okay. Great. Um. But yeah, you see this in every single. I mean, anything that has a price attached to it, anything in markets. I mean, you'll sometimes see this in commodities and stocks and everything. Like things overstretch, and then the prices come back and then kind of consolidate, and then eventually they break out into what would be considered the longer term trend. They keep going a certain way. And aside from anything storage related, I'd say the graph right now is probably the best example of that. Like it was really, really strong earlier this year, went down, consolidated, and it appears to be breaking out right now.
Mhm.
And we're gonna see, yeah. So that's the answer. The answer to your question, I guess, is like overall long term,
Mhm.
most things continue to slowly go up.
Mhm.
Now you will have certain other projects that can't deliver on the tech. I'm not going to name any names,
Yeah.
but I do have some that I'm thinking about that have continued to push off deadlines and not been able to deliver on a single thing, and that's why they haven't had their prices get out of the rut yet. But I think overall you're gonna continue to see a gradual climb, and then eventually things will something's going to happen in the future. I don't know when, but things will start to almost consolidate. You're still going to have a lot of actors in the ecosystem, but you're going to have the ones that can't really deliver on the tech eventually fold. And how long that takes, who knows? But I mean, we kind of saw that with the .com stuff back in the day, and stuff like that. So it's a lot, and which chains end up becoming like the next big ones, kind of remains to be seen. But I do think we're going to see a continuous churn, possibly for maybe sub 10 years, maybe not quite 10 years, but over 5 years. um yeah, and so there's room for new technologies, new chains, new and like the best example, I guess, would be Solana this year, right? That was a new kind of what would you call it, like 3.0, 4.0 of blockchain tech,
Mhm.
you know and those are the ones that are really going to be bangers in the future. So um literally, I mean, yeah, that's that's pretty much how it works.
Yeah,
So,
awesome. Thank you for those insights. And then just one last question, which you kind of alluded to a little bit earlier as well, back on kind of the opportunities within decentralized storage. I know you touched a little bit on the political risks that comes with these centralized data
well,
servers, but like,
and
could you expound
yeah,
upon that and any other like particularly big
well,
opportunities in decentralized storage?
I mean, number one, like, all right, get outside of the United States, get outside of a lot of other places. Like, you're having certain issues globally, I mean, that somehow are political, even though like it's hard to classify it at first as political, but it turns into being political even though it shouldn't. That's kind of how things are happening. So there's that risk all around. But then it's also, I mean, there's also more than that. It's also basically just having it, with one company, like that sort of basic risk too. But yeah, so there's that. The rest of it, that comes is kind of, it's mostly because of that. I mean, it's mostly because of that. And that's around the world. It's you there's a lot of systems for a lot of reasons that I could get into it, but it's quite a lot, that are not going to continue to work.
Mhm.
Uh some of it's demographics, some of it's simply because, oh, I don't know, 90% of the planet imports their food.
Mhm.
Vulnerable. Vulnerable systems are going to crack without a doubt. And when they crack, there's not only political, there's everything. And if you're an online company or any sort of company trying to maintain your business operations, um, if your main, data service provider, storage provider is in one of those jurisdictions, that becomes vulnerable too.
Mhm.
Same thing with energy vulnerabilities, etc. There's a lot going on all at the same time, and those are all going to start bursting at the seams pretty obviously, probably in the next 5 or so years. And simply because of that, if you're trying to maintain a business or anything, and you want your data secure and stored in a secure location, you don't have enough, you don't even want it physically with you because that's too much equipment, right? It's going to get a bid. There's no other way around it. Now that doesn't mean it's going to be at first cheaper or more efficient than centralized data centers? Like, probably not. It's going to take a while for that tech to be developed. But I think it can be. But that's kind of how it is. But is it going to be there and utilized? Like, yeah, people won't have a choice. And it's weird that you say it's political, and I would agree that it's political, but it's so weird because it's like it's more than that. It's things that like would not have been political 10 years ago all of a sudden got turned into political, and whether it's because of people's opinions of how things should happen, or just like what we've seen with the pandemic, like supply chain issues. All of a sudden there's all these things that we just took for granted that are now issues. So
definitely, they're all pretty unprecedented. And actually that
for our generation, yeah,
definitely. And that gave me one more thought in terms of, obviously the need for decentralized storage is coming upon. And, within the space, there's already quite a few competitors. Is there anything that you think is particularly, helping some competitors stand out from the pack, or there's specific specs of these decentralized storage technologies that are, presenting themselves as opportunities to, really market better to the audience?
Well, it really depends on how it's built. And I know there's some issues that Filecoin has ran into with kind of like malicious users. And so essentially what it gets to is the same thing with everything in blockchain. It's security issues. If you can take care of security issues, protect people's storage, but also at the same time figure out a way to catalog it, categorize it, etc. Like that's a huge thing to do. It's not that it can't be done, because these other projects are already working on it, and they're but it's like that's it, because it's like with storage, I mean, it could be anything. I mean, is there a certain way to store music files better than, say, like video files, right? Is there a way to do that within the blockchain to make it more efficient, but still maintain it being decentralized so it's not vulnerable, right? That's doozies like that. It's so what it really is like when you start rolling up your sleeves and trying to build these things, just problems you're going to run into, because it's reality, right? Now that doesn't mean, I mean, there are ways to get around them. It's not necessarily that I know everything. I just know that with human ingenuity, like I'm pretty sure we can figure it out. But that's where you're going to get a bid later on, is if you essentially what you do now is, if you're trying to get into the space, you watch every single possible competitor out there, like on a daily basis. And not only do you have accounts with them, not only do you tinker around with how to use their tech, you try to figure out what they're doing on the back end, and you see their announcements and see where they're evolving to, because they're in front of you, right? And you think about how you get 3 to 4 steps in front of them, develop it, come to the market, and kaboom. I mean, that's it. And I mean, I don't have my sleeves rolled up down and dirty in the day-to-day workings of what, Filecoin or storage or SIA or any of these other projects are trying to do. I just know those are issues that they've run into, and there's going to be more issues that they continue to run into. But that doesn't mean that, things can't be solved, and that you can't, by watching them, that you can't get in front of the curve, because they're the first to encounter these problems. You can watch the mistakes that they make, not only encompass and fix all of those, but also kind of run into, I mean, essentially the way you do it is the way you do it with every single tech. You have a pile of money to burn for a while, and you build something that can work better than something else. And then you pop up, ta-da, I'm here. And here's what we can do, and we're better than them, and there you go.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I mean, those were all very insightful answers, and that's the last question that I have for you. So thank you again for coming on and sharing your insights with us. It was really helpful. And
yeah, anytime. I love the map behind you. That's fantastic. I like
Thanks.
maps.
Yeah, I got a map, got a schedule, got to keep a nice clear-headed background for me.
Yeah, no, it's useful. It's useful, especially for if you're doing quite a lot. I don't. I've toned my activities down. I have to think clearly and pick selectively. So it's kind of I try to, yeah,
Definitely.